Good morning and welcome to this Saturday's webinar, Know the Game Rules and Win Monopoly Game Changer Protocol. So, for those of you who have never been here before, my name is Kirsty. I am the head of the education team. And for everyone else, this is Ian, of which I'm sure you all know who he is. And obviously, I'm not Simone, who normally does the webinars. She's having the day off. Welcome to everybody. So we're going to have the slideshow, and Ian's going to talk about everything today, about the new protocol and exciting news and exciting times at the moment. So let's get started. Welcome, Ian, and good morning.
Well, I guess it is morning for everybody. I suppose we have people from different parts of the world. It's very early morning for some of them, I'm sure. So I appreciate
it's the middle of the night.
Either staying up or getting up early. So I really appreciate that. I'm biased, but I think the information that's in this webinar is life-changing. So it's worth staying up, or it's worth getting up early for, I think. But you'll have to judge that as we go through. So all I can say is I wish I knew what I know today. I've turned 60 now, and I wish I'd known this 40 years ago. I would have had a very, very different experience on the Monopoly Board of Commerce. I mean, I had a pretty interesting experience, but I would have had a much more enhanced experience, I think, if I'd known this 40 years ago. So this is your opportunity to take advantage of all the research I've been doing over quite a few years now. If you're interested in research, I publish a lot of research papers at the Ecclesia Law Institute, which I think is one of the links at the end. So if that floats your boat and you like to understand how things hang together, as I do, then there's a whole range of research papers that back up everything I'm going to tell you about today. I think the art of webinars, as I've done quite a few now, is to try hard and make the complex simple. And that's what I'm going to try and do today, because it is quite complicated on one level, but then on another level, it's actually very simple. So I'm going to try and give you somewhere in between the really simple and the complex, but not too much of the complex, because I think I need to justify a few things that I'm going to tell you about. If you're new to this webinar, or my Saturday webinars, some of this information is definitely going to challenge your belief system. If you're not new, you've probably already had that challenge, and I know what it's like, because I came into this information from a very professional background, with letters after my name, and a professional practice, and a money manager and a wealth manager with a load of other professionals that I used to work with, and I can assure you, none of them actually know what I'm going to explain today. I wish I'd known it, but the information is not hidden. It's in plain sight, but very few people are looking for it. And those that are looking for it, from my analysis, is they don't understand it, and they make a lot of mistakes. So hopefully when you navigate through what I'm going to tell you today, you won't be making the mistakes that a lot of people have made. And that I made as well in the early phase. So I'm not perfect, we learn by mistakes. Certainly made quite a few of those in my life. But we're here now. And I honestly believe that this information, everybody should know it. I really do believe it. Even if they don't take any action with it, I believe that everybody should have this in their knowledge bank in case they want to use it. And if they do, they can come and meet with Kirsty and her team and expand a bit more on what the possibilities are with the Monopoly Game Changer, which is pretty much the product of many, many years of work, not just research, but actually all the facilitation of it as well. Because these things don't just magic themselves, they have to be built. You have many teams of people working on many areas of the process. So we have that. It's taken some time to build it all. And I'm trying to make it simple for anyone who wants to enroll in it. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, which is another objective of mine, is to try and make it really easy for people to enjoy the benefits of the Monopoly Game Changer. Yes, you want to understand it, but you don't need to do it all to get the benefits. You need to join the journey and let us guide you through it. So I guess we ought to get on with it, didn't we, Kirsty? So,
yeah, let's get started.
Let's move it on. This really is the content that it's taken me many years to join a lot of dots up, and this is what we're going to be walking through. I could fill many pages of contents that I could talk about, but what I've done is I've filtered and I've refined and I've taken out of what I believe is a huge amount of information that I've absorbed over the years, and I've filtered out the stuff that doesn't really matter, and I've left in what does matter. And what does matter is on this page. In my opinion, everybody should know what's on this page because it's going to help them to play the game of Monopoly with a great deal more skill at an advanced level. So I guess if this was a university course, this would be the summary that you might get in the syllabus at the beginning of a course. But unlike a university course, this one's only a webinar. We're not asking you to turn up somewhere for a number of years. Hopefully you'll learn this, if you don't already know this, fairly quickly, because that's my goal, is to try and get everybody on this webinar in a position where they kind of get it and it's starting to make a lot of sense. It's actually very logical, but when we get to the end, maybe I'll ask you all to say whether this presentation has advanced your knowledge in certain areas and whether you have enjoyed it and whether it's going to add value to your game of Monopoly. I hope so. Let's move it on. A little bit more. This is a bit more detail. The first page is really the meat and bones of it. This is more about how you facilitate it all, which I'll go through. But most of it is about how it works and why it works. I think everybody kind of knows what we're trying to do and what we are doing, but it's the how it works and the why it works, which is what I always find is the most interesting part of any new discovery. Next slide. So this one is a really big one. I call it the game of Monopoly because when I studied the origins of the game of Monopoly, it became very clear to me, like many things out there, that they're actually telling us, those that control us or try to control us, are telling us what they're doing and how they're doing it. And there's lots of clues. There's lots of movies, there's lots of books, and there's games. And one of the games where they're telling us what is really going on is the game of Monopoly. By the way, another one, which we could introduce to a webinar, is snakes and ladders. That's another one. You climb up the ladder and then you fall down the snake. And that's another one which that was brought out to kind of tell us what's going on in this game of commerce that we're all playing, but probably a lot of us are playing it, not me, of course, because I figured it out, but a lot of people are playing Monopoly without really knowing that they're playing. And if they don't know they're playing, they almost certainly won't know the rules of the game. So let me explain it to you in the most simplest way I can. All of us were brought into this world, and unless you're living in, a tribe that doesn't have to register the babies, by the birth certificate construct and the birth certificate registration event, then I suspect that nearly everybody on this webinar has a birth certificate, but it's not theirs. It is a birth certificate for an artificial construct. And this artificial construct it's like a trust or a decedent estate. And what they do is they get your mum and dad to sign up for this process, and they kind of badger them to do it because they want to create this artificial construct. And the artificial construct, you can't take it to dinner, you can't give it a call on the phone. So if you get the birth certificate out of wherever you've kept it, you certainly can't talk to it, can you? And the reason is because it's artificial. It is a construct. It's like a company. It's like a trust, an estate. None of these things you can talk to, but they all do play a very significant role on the Monopoly board, which is an artificial game landscape. So if you can visualize this, you have the living men and women who are not on the Monopoly board. In fact, they can't go on the Monopoly board. You can't step on an artificial board. It's like a hologram. Your foot would go straight through it. You can't lean on it. You can't put your hand on it. But what you can do is you can play the game of Monopoly through the player piece, which is the birth certificate entity. Many people call it the straw man. Many people call it, in the law books, they call it the person. It's the citizen. It is an artificial construct. And I'm going to introduce something else which many people don't talk about because I don't think they really know, which is it is actually a banker. So the artificial construct known as the person, the straw man, the citizen is actually a banker under the Bills of Exchange Act of 1882. So there you go. When you're at a dinner party and you may be talking about what you do, you might want to, I don't know, it's up to you, but you might want to be aware that you are the agent for a banker. So I don't know if that floats your boat or not, but that's the truth of it, right? So what they've done is they've created an agency between the living man, woman, when you come of age, and this artificial construct, which is the person, the citizen. And that person, citizen, straw man, is a banker. And what it's doing all the time is issuing securities. That's its purpose. That's its function. On the game of Monopoly, the banker, the birth certificate construct, has the ability to deposit securities onto the game board, which really is a transference of energy from the living man or woman. And everything on this game board, this Monopoly game board, is basically, it's all artificial. So every other citizen is artificial, every company is artificial, every government is artificial, every trust, estate, all artificial. So get the picture. The living are not on the Monopoly board. The artificial constructs are, and the only way the artificial constructs can play the game of Monopoly is via the transference of the energy of the living men and women onto the game board. And that is the game of Monopoly. They have, those that invented this system, and it's very, very clever, have trapped all of the living men and women through the agency that exists between the living and the artificial construct. And there's loads and loads of people out there who believe that once they realize that they're not the citizen, they're not the person, they're not the straw man, there's a lot of people out there who believe that all you've got to do is say that you're not that construct, you're not that straw man, citizen, person, and you can avoid all of the liabilities that exist on the Monopoly board. And the problem is that's fundamentally flawed because of agency. So it's one of the most important parts of the game of Monopoly is that the living man, woman is the agent for the player piece, the citizen, the person that plays the that plays or goes round the monopoly board as the player piece. There is an agency which makes the living man woman responsible for, the surety for, the underwriter for this artificial construct. Now, as I've said on many of my interviews, it's not all bad news, this agency. It's actually very good news, because although the living man woman is the agent for and responsible for the activities of the straw man person citizen, it is also, because of that agency, able to recoup its energy from the monopoly board. And it couldn't do that if it wasn't the agent for the banker, the birth certificate construct. So they give you, they wrap up this problem, and in the middle of the problem is a solution. And that solution is the ability to recoup signature credit, energy, what people call money. And there you go. So that's the webinar done now. Not really, no. Let's move it on a bit more. So another slide. So how does this monopoly board really work? Fundamentally important. It could not work unless it was bankrupt. It simply would not operate. Now you might be thinking, Ian, that's ridiculous. How can everything on the monopoly board be bankrupt? Surely there has to be some wealth on the monopoly board, doesn't there? Surely there has to be some assets on the monopoly board. Surely those rich people with, their billions, they have to have all the wealth, don't they? Well, the reality is that in 1913, the bankers got together at a place called Jekyll Island, which is an island off the United States. And they decided that having got rid of the opposition, who mostly sunk in the Titanic in a couple of years before, having got rid of the opposition to the Federal Reserve Act, they introduced a system that was going to enslave the planet whilst the planet doesn't know, or didn't know, and probably still doesn't today in the most part, that it's being enslaved. And they did that via this act here, the House Joint Resolution 192, which made the United States a Chapter 11 bankrupt nation. It's actually a corporate construct. If you really go deep into it, the United States is a trust, like the birth certificate entity is a trust. So why, you might be thinking, why on earth would why would they want to make the United States bankrupt? There's a very good reason. So in the 1920s, you had a boom period. There was lots of artificial wealth going on. People were having a very, very good time of it in the 1920s. So you had the boom days, and then you had the big bust, which was the Great Depression in the early 1930s. And that created a scenario where the creditors, which were the big banking families, those that had got together at Jekyll Island, those that had put together the Federal Reserve Act, they then rolled out the solution. So here is the problem, reaction, solution in operation. They created the problem, the Great Depression. They then rolled out the solution, which was to make the United States put it into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And that meant that the creditors could control the whole money system on the monopoly board. The creditors being the banks, the big banking families, the big banking syndicates, if you like. They became the creditors to the United States. They bailed out the United States, and they then became the creditors. Now, in order to secure their interests so that they weren't going to lose out, they basically took out a mortgage over every asset on the monopoly board. So picture this. Everything that we believe that we own, we actually have nothing apart from the equitable title. We only get to use things on the monopoly board. So you get to use the car, but you don't own the legal title to it. You get to use the house. You get the equitable title. You don't get to own the legal title. You get to use a company. You don't actually own the company because it's all of these things are registered to the state. So on this monopoly board, you have two titles. I'm going to come back to this in a few slides' time. We have the illusion that we own things, but in fact, we don't. All we have is the use of the things that are the artificial things that are on the monopoly board. And everything on the monopoly board is based on debt. So it's quite an interesting fact that when you look at your bank account and you see positive numbers, hopefully in your bank account, those numbers are actually negative because everything on the monopoly board is debt. It's all negative. So the bottom line is House Joint Resolution 192 introduced the bankruptcy of the United States, the biggest bankruptcy in living history, still today. It's still bankrupt today. And by 1944, when the Bretton Woods Accord was rolled out at the 1 year before the end of the Second World War, every other nation joined together with the United States in the Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, you might be thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me, I'm in Australia. Or it doesn't apply to me, I'm in Canada. It doesn't apply to me, I'm in Russia. It applies to everybody because the United States dollar is the world reserve currency. And if you study the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, you'll realize that everything is like a big pyramid and it's all got the dollar in it. So the bankruptcy of the United States is significant for just about every other country in the world. If you think of the monopoly board and all the countries all sitting on this monopoly board, all operating in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And because of that, and because the creditors, the banking creditors, like bankers being bankers, they don't provide their credit unless they've taken a charge. And the charge they took was a mortgage over all of the assets, which is why everything is registered to the state, because the registration provides the legal title, the real substance ownership of the things to the state, and the state is in hoc to the United States or the creditors of the United States bail out, if you like, bankruptcy that was House Joint Resolution 192. So that is the physical assets that have all been mortgaged. But there's one other thing which they took a mortgage out over, and that is the energy of the people. So all those birth certificate constructs that have been registered into this system and all of the assets that are registered to the states, all the different states on the monopoly board, now what they've got with the registration of the birth certificate, they've got the ability to draw down on the energy of the living men and women. Remember, the living men and women are not on the monopoly board, but they can transfer their energy onto this bankrupt monopoly board through the banker, which is the citizen, person, straw man, that is, under the Bills of Exchange Act, able, of 1882, able to issue negotiable instruments, making deposits into banks. And that is the significance of the bankruptcy, because then what it means is that all the creditors, the big banks are creditors, but there have to be other creditors of the bankruptcy of the United States, which is pretty much the bankruptcy of the entire world. Those other creditors are the living men and women. And that's pretty significant, yeah? Next slide. So what we have is what's called a usufruct debt system. And the system is based upon this mortgage that I just mentioned on the previous slide. So what you really have here is you have the creditors, which were the big banks that provided credit to bail out the United States because of the Great Depression, took a mortgage over all of the assets and all of the energy that is being put onto the monopoly board through these negotiable instruments. Now, the banks are all operating basically in a way that is a nominee way. I'll explain it a bit as we go through, but basically all the banks are is trustees, nominees, fiduciaries. They're not actually what they appear to be. They are on the monopoly board to operate as nominees. In this usufruct system, where the creditors, that's the main banks that were around in 1913, the big ones like JP Morgan, they're the real creditors, and they provided the credit to the United States. The United States went into bankruptcy. The credit was provided on the basis that all of the assets were mortgaged, including the energy of the people. And very, very few people know this. You won't find any economics so-called experts talking about this, which I find very, very interesting. Either they don't know or they just don't want to tell you, because it might blow up your belief paradigm if they did. I actually think a lot of them don't even know how it works, because I've listened to a lot of them talk, and they don't half talk a lot of nonsense. So that's the reality. Is the monopoly board is a bankrupt board. It's an artificial board. Everything on it you can use. You get the equitable title, meaning you can use it, like you can use the car, but the state owns it. You can use your house, but the state owns it. You can use everything on this monopoly board as long as you pay your dues, which is typically taxes. You get the equitable title. You don't get the legal title. So that's the monopoly board. The real would be legal title. The artificial is equitable title. Everything on this monopoly board looks real, but it's actually artificial. It's genius. It's next level genius how they've tricked everyone. Next slide. So if you then look at, well, what's really going on here on this monopoly board, as I mentioned 2 slides ago, if you look in your bank account and you'll see positive numbers, hopefully, those numbers are actually negatives because there's nothing other than debt on the monopoly board. If you get a bill in for your gas, your electricity, your utilities, and they say you owe X, whatever their X is, that is actually a negative value. There is no such thing as a positive value on the monopoly board. It's all an illusion. Everything is debt-based. Everything has a minus in front of it. And the only way you can actually remove the problem of a bill is to discharge it with new debt, which is quite an interesting concept. So you can't pay anything on this monopoly board. You can only discharge things on the monopoly board. You can't actually pay because there is no money of substance. All there is debt. And that debt gets on the board because of the transference of the energy from the living man woman off the board onto the monopoly board through the artificial construct, where the artificial construct is a banker issuing negotiable instruments, making deposits of energy with the banks that operate on the monopoly board. And those banks are operating as nominees, trustees, fiduciaries for the living men and women who are joining together with the big banking families from 1913, the creditors of the entire bankrupt monopoly board. So this 1933 reorganization that became a worldwide system, it's not just the United States. A lot of people have asked me on my webinars, on my interviews, well, Ian, it doesn't apply to me, does it? Because I'm not in the United States. Well, the whole world is based on the International Monetary Fund, the Bank for International Settlements, the big central banks, and then you've got the clearing banks, investment banks. It's all one big pyramid, and it's all based on, if you boil it right down and balance it back to its origins, it's all based on the United States dollar, which is why, in many reasons, the United States is, forgive me, as arrogant as it is in the world scene, because they've got the world reserve currency and they run the monopoly board pretty much despite the fact that others believe that they might have a say, like the Chinese and the Russians. The United States still runs the money game, the monopoly game. So that's why they're a bit arrogant. But all of these things are just background knowledge. It's not really that important for you to play the game of Monopoly with more skill at the advanced level and take advantage of the Monopoly Game Changer. But it's just background knowledge which might help you in your journey of where you are now, probably, and how you believe the world works, to where I am, having spent many, many years studying this and written over 80 research papers on this, packed full of technical references if you ever want to read them. Next slide. So back to our sort of foundational concept or truth is the living soul versus the player piece. So it's so important. Where a lot of people are going wrong out there is they are realizing that they're not the player piece, they're not the person, not the birth certificate, not the decedent estate that's created by the registration of the birth certificate entity, which is actually the registration of the placenta. But we don't need to go down that pathway because it's not that important. What you really need to know is that the living man woman is the source of the energy, the agent for the birth certificate construct. The birth certificate construct is a banker. It is the piece that plays, that it goes round the Monopoly board as the player piece. So if you imagine you're sitting at a Monopoly board table and you're playing with your friends or your family, everyone's moving the player piece around the Monopoly board and there's artificial money on the Monopoly board, yeah? You can't spend that Monopoly money outside the game of Monopoly. But in the game that we're all playing, you can use the Federal Reserve notes or the fiat currency to discharge things. And that's all you can do on the artificial Monopoly board. So it's pretty important to know how this works, because if we're all playing this game of Monopoly but don't really know the rules, how are we going to win the game? Can't win the game unless you know the rules. So one of the foundational pieces of knowledge is that you're not the player piece, but you are the agent for it. The player piece is a banker. Without that banker status, you couldn't recoup your signature credit recoupment that we're going to talk about in the latter part of this presentation. So it's pretty important, the agency, and you actually want to keep it. You don't want to get rid of it like a lot of people try. It's actually a blessing that you've been given, but most people don't know how to use it. So they try and get rid of it. They try and say, I'm not the birth certificate, and they're right to say that. And they try and ignore the fact that the living man woman is the agent, therefore responsible for the debts of that have been incurred by the player piece, the citizen, the person. But at the same time as the living man woman is responsible for the debts, the living man woman is the creditor for everything that they have put on the Monopoly board, all that credit energy. And what do I mean by credit energy? Bank payments, the face value of mortgages, the face value of credit cards, the highest value, loans. Think of that. If you think of what is that value that you may have put on the Monopoly board since the age of 18, that is the energy that I'm talking about. Quite a lot to take in, I know. But if you just think about it, every time you make a bank payment, every time you get a mortgage loan or a credit card, you are transferring energy onto the Monopoly board. You're actually making deposits because you're the entity that we're calling the birth certificate construct, the banker, is making deposits to banks, and those banks are holding that credit energy as nominees, as fiduciaries, trustees for you, the living man and woman, as the source of the energy. Next slide. So the agency trap and the executor decentor. Let's talk about the liabilities of the living man and woman. So a lot of people in the sort of truth and free man or freedom communities, I should say, are trying to separate themselves from the birth certificate construct. They're doing all sorts of things, serving notices, making declarations, going in courtrooms, handing over the birth certificate to judges, all sorts of things. I've written a lot of research papers on this. And what they don't realize is that you cannot collapse the agency. This agency was established because your mum and dad registered the birth certificate construct into the Monopoly Board system, and there is a DNA linkage because this artificial construct which was created, this trust or decedent estate, is actually representative of the placenta. So there is a DNA linkage between the living man woman and the birth certificate construct, the straw man citizen person. You can't get rid of that. It's there, it's permanently there. But the next problem is the executor de son tour. And that means that the living man woman, when they come of age, operates the person, citizen, straw man, under, because it is a decedent estate, they become the executor of all of the wrongs, the birth certificate construct, all of its dealings on this artificial monopoly board are basically all being operated in a fraud, because the birth certificate name, the very last name on the birth certificate, what people call the family name or the surname, that name is the registered name for the player piece, which is registered to the state. So if you go around holding yourself out, as I used to do, Ian Clifford Stamp being the name on the birth certificate, the family name. If I'm holding myself out as if I am Ian Clifford Stamp, I'm actually operating in fraud, because I am not that artificial construct. I'm just the agent for it. Ian Clifford, the living man, is the agent for Ian Clifford Stamp, the birth certificate construct. But I've been going around saying I am Ian Clifford Stamp, and I did that for many years without realizing it, as I'm sure everybody else on this webinar has done. That creates an executor de son tour problem, meaning that you're holding yourself out as something that you are not. And all of the contracts that have been entered into by the birth certificate construct on the artificial monopoly board are basically void in many ways because of the executor de son tour. But those that run the bankruptcy and the monopoly board don't want to tell you this, which is why when you go in a courtroom, if you've ever wondered, if you've ever been in a courtroom, why is it that in most occasions the living man woman as the agent for the birth certificate construct never wins in the courtroom? Hardly ever wins against the state, against any of the government entities. And the reason for that is because of executor de son tour. Because you go in there as a debtor, you go in there under this executor de son tour status, because you've been operating the player piece and saying it's you when it isn't actually you at all. And that is deliberate. It's why they set it up this way. But at the same time, you want that agency, because that agency enables you to recoup the signature credit. So there you go. The birth certificate construct is the name on the car, the name on the house, the name on land, the name on shares, investments, pensions, everything. All of those things are basically void in many ways. But they won't void them because they want you to be trapped within this executor de son tour status. Next slide. So when you want to look at things like the mortgage problem, and I've just published a paper this morning on our Telegram channel, which is basically it's the Achilles heel of the entire mortgage market worldwide. They are soon waking up to the fact that the illusion of them being the creditors is shattered once you understand how the game works with mortgages. And if you're interested, go on our Telegram channel, the Monopoly game, the Playing Monopoly to Win Telegram channel, and you can read that research paper. It's quite an eye-opener. So basically what you've got is you've got things like mortgages, debts, court issues, and you've got things like tax liens and all kinds of problems, all registered against the player piece, the artificial construct. So it creates a lot of problems. You see, this agency is a problem, but it's also a blessing at the same time. The artificial person on the monopoly board gets itself into many, many problems, like mortgage arrears, like tax liens, like court cases. Many people on this webinar may be experiencing problems on the monopoly board. As the agent for the birth certificate construct, it's quite difficult to solve those problems unless you know how to play the game of monopoly. And the reason why many people fail, with all of the arguments that I read about and I hear about a lot, and people are doing interviews and all these things about how they can separate themselves from the birth certificate construct and win in courtrooms, none of those things actually work. I've asked many, many times for people to send me evidence of these things working, these different ideologies. Nobody's ever done it. I've researched high and low. None of these things actually work, but more and more people are trying to make them work, even though there's actually there'll never be a winning hand if you are not understanding the monopoly board game. Everything that people is trying on the monopoly board, where they're trying to separate themselves from the birth certificate construct, will lose, and always has lost and always will lose. So you have to know about the agency, you have to know how to play the game of monopoly, and you have to realize that those that created the monopoly board are very, very smart. They know all the moves, but they did leave quite a few doorways open. And in the back end of this presentation, I'm going to show you where they are. Next slide. Now, if you are experiencing problems on the monopoly board itself, these debt problems, tax problems, court case type problems, there's one thing that you can do, which is coming very soon. We're launching a series of avatars and AI systems that will enable you to run your own cases on the monopoly board using something which does absolutely work. It's called the art of legal warfare. I've had many interviews about this in the last few months, and as I've been explaining on my interviews, many people believe that the courts are there for justice. Many people believe the courts are there as arbiters of what is right and trying to suppress what is wrong. So many people believe that that is the function of the courts, to uphold what is right and honourable and to suppress what is wrong and dark. And I'm here to tell you, having been through many, many court cases myself, that that is not the job of the courts. The courts don't really care about what's right and wrong. The courts really only care about procedure, all about procedure. And if you look in all of the court manuals, the civil procedure rules, court manuals, the procedures of the court in every country, you could probably get 2 telephone books and put them together, and all those court procedures are in there. That is how the courts operate. They operate on procedures, and if you identify in a case the claimant or the plaintiff's problems that they've created for themselves by missing out or breaching procedural rules, you can beat them by looking at the Achilles heel of their case, not whether it's right or wrong, whether they've actually followed the procedure that the court wants them to follow. And in every single case I've ever looked at, and I've looked at a lot, there's always procedural errors. And that is the Achilles heel that you can exploit using the art of legal warfare. You're not trying to argue that you're right and somebody else is wrong. That doesn't work in a courtroom. What certainly not for debt or for taxes. What works is looking at the procedure of the claimant or the plaintiff of the case, and then attacking that weakness, which is the art of legal warfare. You're not going to win against banks or tax collectors, tax officers, by what's right and wrong. You're only ever going to win by looking at the artificial construct has made a procedural error. That's the plaintiff, the claimant, somewhere in their case. And the AI systems that we are shortly going to be rolling out for things like mortgage foreclosure, things like voiding mortgages, things like tax debts, those artificial systems that we're bringing in, the artificial intelligence systems that are being programmed to focus explicitly on those types of problems with an avatar, which will be able to help you to know what to do next, to ask questions, to be able to get into the knowledge base that I have put together on all of these subjects. And then the AI system will be able to produce the documents that you need to serve, show you where to serve them, how to serve them, run your own case, what's called a pro se litigant. You don't need lawyers. You don't need lawyers, A, because they don't work for you. They work for the courts. They work inadvertently for the banks. They work for the state because they're all registered under the bar. What you want, if you're going to run your own cases, is you want an artificial system that has got huge knowledge and it's working for you, not working for the banks or working for the courts. And that, I think a lot of people are quite excited by this. We are building it at the moment, so it won't be long before we will be rolling these things out. Next slide. And that's it, your digital workforce, the AI system. So right now, if you had access to an AI system that could identify the Achilles heel in a mortgage foreclosure, in a tax case, in any kind of case that's related to debt or bankruptcy, for example, if you had a system that could identify the Achilles heel and then help you to, by actually writing all the documents that you need to serve, and then you had an avatar that you could ask, what does this mean? What does that mean? This has just happened. What do I do now? What do I do about this, that, or the other? That's what the AI and the avatar system will assist you with. And we're going to make it free of charge. So that might surprise a few people. We're not actually charging anything for it. We're going to make it available for our members and our envoys free. But they do have to be taking part in the Monopoly Game Changer, which they want to do anyway if they understand what it's doing for them. Next slide. 24/7. You'll be able to ask it questions whenever you want. It will remember all of your conversations because it's got a memory of everything you've ever discussed with it. All the documents you've loaded into it, everything you've ever talked about. It's like you're talking to me. And I've got a memory of everything we've ever chatted about, what all your documents look like, what all of your court situations look like, everything. That's what it can do. Now, before we get to the AI and the avatar system for the court cases, there is very shortly, I'm confident we'll be launching it next week, is the Ian Clifford AI avatar. So everything I've written about, everything I know has been loaded into a database, huge database, and you'll be able to engage with it and ask it anything. Ask it to present this webinar, ask it to present my Q&As, ask it to present any of the things that I've written about in my 80 plus research papers. It's got huge knowledge base, and you'll be able to access that avatar anytime you want, 24/7. So I think it's the next best thing to actually coming and having a chat with me, sitting down with me for a coffee. It's the next best thing. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. I hope they will. It's been put a lot of work into it, so I hope it's going to be beneficial. And as I say again, it's going to remember all your conversations. So it's not like a chat bot where you turn up and you ask it something and it's forgotten that 3 days ago you asked the same or similar question and it's completely forgotten about that. It's got a memory. It's pretty advanced intelligence, this stuff. So it's going to remember everything you've already asked. And it's also going to send you out the proof. So if you ask it a question that you want to get the answer on and it's going to give you the answer, It's then going to send to you the proof, the technical proof that that answer is correct. Pretty powerful stuff, yeah?
Well, we're getting a lot of interest in it, saying they can't wait for it. Thank you so much. So it's going to go down a storm, I think.
I think it will. I think
Yeah.
it's a really good addition to our, the knowledge gap. There's no doubt there's a knowledge gap. And I think this will help to bridge it and to narrow it down. Because if everybody knew what I knew, oh my word, how powerful would everybody be on this Monopoly game? So
exactly, definitely.
Let's move it on. Okay, so let's now talk about the Monopoly Game Changer, because really the most of the problems that people are experiencing, not all, but the majority of the problems that people are experiencing on the Monopoly board, things like the cost of living crisis, things like the debts and taxes, things like you want to have more time to do what you want and spend less time slaving away at your job or your business. All of those types of problems can all be solved with the Monopoly Game Changer protocol. And I've designed it so that it's only got 3 components. You add those 3 components together, and I believe it's the most powerful package available anywhere in the world for freedom and for taking charge of your game of Monopoly, stepping into financial abundance, where you can completely change your lifestyle going forward by principally recouping your signature credit, which is the energy, the bank payments, the mortgages, the loans, the credit cards that all of us, unless we've only just turned 18, have all put on the Monopoly board. Just think of how much that is. That's a large amount. Now I want you to think about, if you recouped all of that, how much would that be? And then you could spend it. Let's just use common language. You could spend it and then the next year recoup it all back again. And then spend it and then recoup it all back again the next year. How awesome would that be? That is basically the essence of the main benefit of the Monopoly Game Changer protocol. So in order to achieve that, if you're interested in that, if you're already doing it and you can't wait for the day when it all starts to happen, and I've done many interviews about our progress and our proofs and our evidence of it all working, you can find all of those on the ROS Media channel. There's a link towards the end of the webinar. If you are interested in changing your lifestyle, recouping that signature energy, not having to work anymore if you don't want to, not having to run your business that you might not like anymore, you can just completely go in a different direction and work on things that might actually be more pleasurable than what you're already doing, or just relax, whatever you want to do. It's entirely up to you. Because you see, the antidote for the modern slavery system, which we've all been enrolled into by our mum and dad, believe it or not, and the way that this Monopoly board system works, we've all been enrolled to a modern slavery system. The Monopoly Game Changer protocol is the antidote to the slavery system. And it's only available with us because nobody else has put it together. Okay, the first component that you're going to need is the Envoy protocol. Why do you need it? Basically because the agency, you've got this agency, you've got this executor to Sontalk problem, and you want to make sure that your standing as a living man, woman is being cleaned up. That's the whole purpose of the Envoy protocol. You also become an envoy for the Republic of Old Souls ministry. It's not religion. Nobody's kneeling down and praying or anything like that. It's about believing in, acting with honor, acting with integrity, acting as the creditor and the beneficiary of all that credit energy that you've put on the Monopoly board. If you can believe in those things and be peaceful at the same time, that is the belief of the envoys of the Republic of Old Souls. And when you get into what religious beliefs really means, because there's a special standing of religious envoys, that's what you can achieve with the Envoy protocol. You clean up the agency. You basically become an envoy for a ministry. That elevates your standing up. It's going to help you in anything you do on the Monopoly board. You're not trying to remove the agency. You want the agency, but you want to clean it up at the same time. And that is what the Envoy protocol is designed to do. There is a whole guide to it. I did a 2-hour interview about every part of it with Andy Benson not long ago. All aspects of it. If you want to go and play that video or ask the avatar when it's available, it's all in the interview. It will be on the avatar. All of the many, many benefits of this, what it is, why it works, and how it works. Envoy protocol, the first component of the Monopoly Game Changer protocol. Next slide. Now, I said earlier on that the problem with the agency is the executor de Centaur. So what happens when you take on board the Envoy protocol is that you start to operate as the occupying the office of the general executor. So remember, the living man woman cannot stand on the Monopoly board. It's impossible. It's artificial. It's like a hologram, remember? So what you can do is occupy the office. Now, it's not an office that you can go to and pay rent on, but every title has an office. The office of the president, the office of the prime minister, doctors have an office. Every title has an office. And when you're looking at the artificial Monopoly board, what you can do is you can occupy that office as the general executor of the decedent estate. That's the decedent estate of the person, the citizen, the straw man. And that is now rescinding and cleaning up this executor de Centaur and replacing it with the general executor position. Remember, the decedent estate is in probate. It's an estate that needs an executor, but instead of it being an executor de Centaur, you replace that, which is where all the problems are, with the general executor, or the occupant of the office of general executor. Very important component of the Monopoly Game Changer, and it's rolled into the program because it is a vitally important component. Those 3 components, it's the first of the 3 components. Next slide. The Asset Fortress Protocol. Now, a lot of people are worried about digital ID. They're worried about track and trace. They're worried about taxes. They're worried about, can they hold their assets for their loved ones, their heirs? What can they do to be more private with their dealings? And most importantly, how can they use the Asset Fortress Protocol as their private treasury to spend, that is, making new transactions on the Monopoly board, making new deposits, because that's what they are, signature credit deposits, and then recouping them back to the Asset Fortress Protocol as a private treasury. So that's pretty much what it's designed to do. It's separate. It's not the birth certificate construct. It is a separate entity that sits on the Monopoly board, but it is not part of the debtor-based system. So important. It is a creditor entity. It is a nominee for you, the living you. So you get to be the beneficiary of the Monopoly board. On the Monopoly board is the Asset Fortress Protocol that can hold assets, can have bank accounts, can spend by issuing deposits and recouping funds back. It goes round in a circle. You spend and recoup, and it all flows through the Asset Fortress Protocol, which is not going to give you a problem with tracking and tracing, digital ID, all this nonsense which the governments are rolling out in all the countries. You can operate as under the Asset Fortress Protocol, the banking element of it, in privacy. And that is significantly important. The Asset Fortress Protocol is not the citizen. It is separate player piece on the Monopoly board. It's what the super rich have done for centuries, is they put trusts on the Monopoly board and they use them to play the game of Monopoly. That's what you can do with the Asset Fortress Protocol. You can hold assets, you can hold physical assets, you can hold artificial assets, you can hold just about anything in it in privacy, and it's separate from the citizen, so there's no contagion. Everybody should have one, in my opinion. Next slide. Things like, it's not as easy as it looks, but there are opportunities to get something called fee simple title. That means that the true legal title ownership of land, property. I've done a whole interview on this. There are opportunities to get fee simple title on certain assets, definitely physical assets that you can hold. You can definitely have the fee simple title of those. You can definitely have fee simple title on certain types of land, certain types of property, but it is case by case. But basically, it gives you privacy. And one of its main advantages going forward, and you're going to thank me for this, is because they're going to track and trace every single one of your bank transactions. They're already doing it, by the way. And they're going to stop you from spending on things that you want to spend on that don't fit in with their control agenda. But not so with the Asset Fortress Protocol, because it's private, it's separate from the citizen, and it's operating under its own, basically its own standing on the Monopoly Board as a creditor entity, not as a debtor entity. Next slide. And this is the big one. I presented this a little while ago, and one of the audience said, Ian, do you think this is a candidate for the Nobel Prize? I have to tell you, I was quite flattered by that. My ego was a little bit brushed up with that. I have spent a long time putting this together. I've used all of my skills and abilities to put this together. It's all in my documents. There are documents that go through it from A through Z. I've figured it all out. I believe there's nothing left. There's no stone left unturned. It is 100% the way the system works. And in my opinion, if you're not already doing it, you need to have a look at it, because this is the game changer right here. Signature credit recoupment is the game changer. Everything you've put on the board, every bank payment, every mortgage, every credit card, every loan from the age of 18 is sitting on the Monopoly Board. And the way it works is the banks are operating as nominees for you, the living man, woman. They're only nominees. They don't get to truthfully hold themselves out as the creditors. They are the debtors. You, the living man, woman, are the creditors to the whole Monopoly Board system. Everything on that Monopoly Board is artificial. It's all debt. The investment banks are paying taxes for the use of your energy. It's the simplest way I can put it. You've transferred your energy onto the Monopoly Board through the artificial person, the construct, the banker, remember. That energy moves around the board. It's all debt. And that debt, the banks are using it, and they're making a very nice return for them on it. They have to pay taxes to the United States Treasury for using your energy. That tax that they are paying, and it is somewhere between $50 and $100 billion a year of taxes, belongs to every man and woman on the planet. That is what you're recouping on signature credit recoupment. Not the mortgage, not from the bank, not from the mortgage provider. The taxes which the United States Treasury is receiving for the creditors who are not claiming it, abandoning those tax rebates. That is signature credit recoupment. Some people think they're recouping the actual bank payments that they made, the actual mortgage, the actual credit cards. They're not. They're recouping the taxes that the banks have paid for the use of that credit energy. That is what you're doing when you're doing signature credit recoupment. Again, I've done whole interviews on this. I've gone into it in a lot of detail. I've written research papers on it. If you're interested to really know how this works, it's all in that content I've just mentioned. Let's move it on. Next slide. We don't know exactly what the average is for all of our members yet, because not all of our members have started to do it. But I suspect that we're talking around about 3 million. What do you say, Kirsty? You've met quite a few people now. What do you say? I mean, is that too low? Do you think it's higher than that?
Oh, it's really hard because obviously, dependent on age and everything else, I'm thinking about between 3 and 6, maybe. Some people have actually said to me higher. Some people have said a lot higher as well. So I'm thinking around 3 million's a good one. And I think that would probably be on average for a lot of people. So yeah, I'd probably say 3, but yeah, there are going to be some people which is a lot higher.
Yeah, obviously it depends on how many years you've had playing the game. You know, if you're my age, I mean, my value is pretty high, right? So I've been on the board a long time, and I did a lot of things on the Monopoly board. So my value is pretty high. Somebody who's 25, who's just left uni, probably isn't much on there yet. So it all depends. It all depends on how you played the game. You might have had one bank account, you might have had 10, you might have had one mortgage, you might have had 50 mortgages. Who knows? It's all different, isn't it? Everyone's got a different experience playing the game. But all you need to know is that all of that credit energy is sitting there waiting for you to recoup it. And it's not going to go away. You don't have to do it today, because you can do it next week. You can start it off next week. No one's going to take it away. But there is a problem, which I have explained on many of my interviews. The problem is that it's constrained by the amount of tax that the investment banks are paying for the use of your energy. So not everybody in the world can do signature credit recoupment. I'd say between 500,000 and 1 million at a very nice amount, a very attractive amount of signature credit recoupment each year. And that would exhaust the taxes that the investment banks are paying, this 50 to 100 billion a year that they're paying in taxes, because that is the constraint. So not everybody in the world can do this. So if you're already doing it, you are one of the 0.01% of the world population that's doing this. And if you're not already doing it, I need to ask you why, because I can't see any reason not to do it. It's going to give you a life-changing experience, I think, once it starts to come in and you're recouping it in these endless cycles. Next slide.
Amazing.
So what could you do with it? Let's imagine that you've got mortgages now, and you've got credit cards, loans, you've got tax bills, you've got utility bills, right? Just imagine that that is where you are now, or you may not need to imagine it, because it's probably where you already are, right? Let's imagine that you don't want to go down the art of legal warfare. You're quite happy. You're playing the game of Monopoly. You're keeping your head above water. You're okay, right? But you could just do with a really big boost that this could give you. In your first recoupment into your Asset Fortress protocol, you can discharge all of your debts and taxes. So all your mortgages can be discharged. All your loans, credit cards can be discharged. All your tax bills, utility bills, whatever bills you've got can be discharged from your Asset Fortress protocol. And guess what? When those discharges leave your bank account in your Asset Fortress protocol, that is new signature credit going back onto the Monopoly board, which you then recoup in the next year. So the very, very peaceful way of operating with the Monopoly Game Changer is to recoup all the signature credit from the age of 18. When it comes in, discharge all your debts, taxes, and all the other bills, and then recoup those discharges, and then spend it and then recoup it. That's if you don't want to go into the art of legal warfare. You might want to, because you may be in a mortgage foreclosure, or you may want to get rid of your mortgage, or you may have a tax problem. I've been looking at some members' issues, and there's some people out there with some pretty big issues on the Monopoly board that you may want to use the art of legal warfare to solve whilst you're waiting for your signature credit to come in. It's I've got a tattoo on my arm here, infinity, right? Because signature credit is infinity. It's infinity loops of signature credit recruitment. Energy going on the board, coming back off the board, going on the board, coming back off the board. But instead of it being new energy, you've already put it on the board. You've already earned your stripes. Next slide. Now, I am also very, very well aware that a lot of our members are struggling to come up with the donation required. So what I've done is two things, and this is going to be available. I think we're ready to go from now, aren't we, Kirst? We're pretty much ready.
Pretty much ready, yeah. Pretty much. Right. Hopefully this weekend I'll be testing a few bits. So yeah, pretty much.
So what you can do, and you need to get, if you want to do this, right, you need to have a chat with Kirsty or one of her team, and you need to evaluate how much signature credit are you going to be recouping. So that means you're going to have to remember what bank accounts you had, roughly how much you put through them. We've made it as easy as possible to evaluate it, and you're going to come up with a number. And that number is going to determine what your donation is to ROS, our ministry. And then if you can't budget that, if that's outside your budget, you're able to reduce that donation down. It increases the donation on the back end because we take a success fee on the back end, or it's a success donation, but then you recoup that. So you don't actually lose anything. You get 100% of your recouped signature credit. And when you think about it, the enrollment donation doesn't cost you anything anyway, because you're going to recoup it. As soon as you get to your first recoupment event, you're recouping that donation. So it really is a free. I know you've got to cash flow it. And if you can't cash flow it because you haven't got the budget, you can reduce down the front end and increase the back end, and then recoup that donation on the back end, as well as recoup the front end. So the whole thing becomes basically you can enroll for free. If you analyze it and sit back from it, it's a free system. Now, the other thing that I've introduced is that for those who want to spread the word, who want to put these webinars in front of people they know, you can refer people to my webinars. I'm running them every week. I may be doing 2 or 3 in a week coming up soon for different countries at different times. And you can refer people to come and watch my webinars. And everyone who comes to watch, you get £100 credit to set against your enrollment into the Monopoly Game Changer. So in theory, if you had a big network, and I think we will see some people achieve this, you would actually be able to enroll in this program, the Monopoly Game Changer, without any donation at all, because you've referred enough people for it to be equal to or greater than the enrollment amount. So if you've got a network, or you've got social media, or you've got a way of putting our webinar links in front of your friends, family, network of people that you know, and enough of them came, you actually might be able to enroll for no donation at all. Next slide.
Oh, okay. So now we're at the questions. So these are the top 7 questions now, and you are going to be doing an extended Q&A with Andy, where I'm sure we'll have a lot more questions, certainly that have come in today, and I'm sure we'll probably get a lot more coming through. So that will be arranged. So the main top 7 questions. So how can I stop acting as a pauper and start operating as a master on the Global Monopoly Board?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to know how the Monopoly Board works, and I've explained some of it. You really need to get a bit more clued up on it, really, because you've got to understand how it works. It's not mandatory, but I think it's better to know how the game works than not know. You will be able to ask the avatar when it's available next week. You'll be able to. You can even plug in my research papers if you don't want to ask the avatar. You can get, I think the app's called Speechify or something like Speechify, and you can just load the documents in, and it will read them back to you like an audio book. And I think a lot of people like doing things like that, because reading heavy documents is not the most enjoyable thing to do. But whilst you're driving your car, you can be listening, which is something I've done quite a bit when I've been doing my research. Or Ask the Avatar when it's available, which should be next week. So basically, you've got to know what you're doing, and then you need to stop operating as the agent for the birth certificate as a debtor. So the birth certificate construct is operating permanently as a debtor. You've got to put a new player piece on the monopoly board. You're going to have to put a grantor trust that's going to be doing your signature credit recoupment, and you need to put a Asset Fortress protocol, another 98 series grantor trust, on the monopoly board, and operate your game of Monopoly through the Asset Fortress protocol. It doesn't mean you get rid of the citizen, the person. You can still keep that going. You don't need to get rid of it, but you don't need it going forward. You can operate independently through the Asset Fortress protocol. You clean up the executor to son tort problem with the Envoy protocol. You become an envoy of Republic of Old Souls, which going forward, when we are ready to, which hopefully will be this year, we'll start our freedom plan, and we will be building our own sovereign nation, which is really why I do all these things, because I want to build that nation with its own independent infrastructure for our envoys, and ultimately get the sovereign nation status. If we can get 500,000 to 1 million, a bit like Liberland has done, although I believe our plan is it's got more substance than theirs, then we may be recognized as a sovereign nation with our own infrastructure, our own currency, everyone abundant, everyone sharing with each other in a community worldwide, without any interference from the controllers, what I call the controllers, those that run the monopoly board, those that run the slavery system. We don't need to worry about them. We're over here doing our thing in our own way.
Yeah. So
that's how you go from being a pauper to being a master. There is a map that I have mapped out. There's a pathway where, hopefully a lot of us will be on that pathway. I know a lot of people are very interested in it. And it starts with recouping signature credit. That is the key that opens the door to freedom for me.
Perfect. So, is it truly possible to recoup, on average, of 3 million in captured signature credit energy generated since I reached the age of 18? Now, I did see a couple of people make comments saying they think there's going to be a lot more than that. Because they've had multiple properties. So where people have had multiple mortgages over the years and had multiple properties, yeah, yours is going to be a lot higher. For the average Joe, like myself, mine won't be as high.
Some people have played a lot of Monopoly and mortgages. A lot of people were, for me, this is it's a very sweet irony, right? I said 20 years ago that people, and don't take this the wrong way, because if you did this, you didn't know, right? That there were a lot of people getting involved in buy-to-let portfolios, landlords, building up property portfolios, thinking that was the answer. You build up 50 or 100 properties, you've got an arbitrage between the rent coming in and the mortgages going out. You employ a load of people to manage your portfolio. You've got a nice lifestyle. It was a very, very attractive proposition, and a lot of people did it. But I said 20 years ago that this is a trap, and it's certainly in the United Kingdom, it's a massive trap. Now the landlords are struggling really badly. I did a whole webinar on this a couple of weeks ago. You can know the model no longer works because there are taxes that you can't offset the mortgage cost against the rent coming in. There's huge tax problems. There's huge issues with tenancy rights. It's a massive problem for landlords. But the irony of it is that all that signature credit that you put on the monopoly board, getting all these mortgages, not only could you void them all, and I did a webinar on this recently about how to void all the mortgages, and my document I've put on Telegram this morning kind of goes into it quite deeply if you're into the deep research stuff. But the irony of it is that they try to enslave you through getting you to take out all these mortgages, but that's bumped up the amount of signature credit recoupment that you can now bring into your private treasury. So their little ruse didn't work for those who do signature credit recoupment.
Yep. No. Yep. Okay. So. Yeah. Exactly.
Just before I go on, Kirst, there is an interview. Ange, who runs our projects, she did an interview with Andy Benson. You can find it on RS Media, and I think it's part of this. It may even be a handout where she's showing you wages and tax transcripts, confirmed IRS. This is not, this is nothing other than proof from the IRS, where there was between 20 and 30 million confirmed. I think that's one of the examples she uses. Yeah. So can you recoup 3 million with this system? Absolutely. Last year we had confirmed between 20 and 30 million on one case. I think there was a number of other very large cases as well. You will need to, just a caveat, if you want to recoup a lot more than 3, if it goes over 10, you will need more than one trust, because there is a limitation on how much each trust, that's the tax filing trust, can recoup. But for most people, it's probably under 10 million, I imagine, for most people.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. How does the Envoy protocol utilise the international principle of clausula rebus sic stantibus to rescind my presumed agency to the state?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's an error in the question, which is you can't rescind it, but you can clean it up. What you can rescind is the fraud, right? So what's going on? As we all did, we held ourselves out as the birth certificate construct. That creates an identity fraud. Every time we say, my name is this, whatever the birth certificate name is, or the driving license name, the bank card name, you may have got married, you're still doing it. Because even the marriage certificate is a registered, it's like another certificate that's registered. So even the marriage name doesn't belong to the married couple, it belongs to the state, right? So they trap you in using their name. It's their name, not yours. I know it's a real difficult concept to get your head around, but the name on the birth certificate belongs to the state. It does not belong. That last name, that family name, doesn't belong to you. Your mum and dad might argue till they're blue in the face, this is our family name, we've had it for centuries, and the answer to that question is no, it's never been your name. It's the name of the registered birth certificate entities. That's the name. So if you employ clausula rebus sic stantibus, which I've said it a few times, so I can roll it off the tongue. If you employ it, what you're actually doing with it is cleaning up. It's a statement that you have made a mistake. It's an innocent mistake that you made by using the name. If you're going to use the name going forward, you're doing it as the general executor or occupying the office of the general executor. And that cleans it up. You don't get rid of it, but you clean up the fraud. So you're rescinding the use of the name where it was fraudulently used. That's the rescission part. But you can't rescind the agency, because you want the agency, because the agency is where the signature credit transfers onto the board, onto the monopoly board.
Okie dokie. So, can the Asset Fortress Protocol really hold my home and any other real assets in fee simple title beyond the reach of the state registries and liens?
Well, again, I've written a whole research paper on this. Yes is the answer, but it depends on the situation. There are certain properties that you can't get the fee simple title. There are 3 titles. You've got allodial, 4 titles. You've got allodial, fee simple, equitable, and legal. There are 4 titles to property, and it all depends on the situation. If you go to Ecclesia Law Institute, there's a whole research paper I wrote about 6 weeks ago on this subject. But I can't say yes or no because it depends on the situation. Every property is different. It's all registered differently. But what you can do is get rid of the debt. The debt is a big problem, right? The mortgage debt on a property is a big problem. So you can't really get proper title ownership of any property if there's a debt registered against the property. So you've got to get rid of that. You've got to discharge that, either with the art of legal warfare, the mortgage discharge using the art of legal warfare, or discharging through recouping signature credit, discharge the mortgage and then recoup the mortgage discharge. 2 ways to do it. But yeah, you've got to get rid of the debt. That stands you in much better stead to get the proper ownership of the property. What you can always do is transfer the equitable title in. And that's what you've already got. In most cases, people have got the equitable title. You can definitely transfer that in. You can definitely make it way more tax efficient. You can hand down the equitable title to your heirs within the Asset Fortress Protocol with no probate, with no taxation, no bullshit going on the Monopoly Board. Because remember, everything in the Asset Fortress Protocol sits separately on the board as a creditor entity. You move from debtor to creditor when you move things into the Asset Fortress.
Perfect. So, how do the coming AI avatars and the Argent system enable me to automate my own legal warfare and referral links with zero daily effort?
Well, basically because of the advancements in AI. I mean, I've got to say, I'll probably do an interview on this. AI, I absolutely know the agenda of AI. I can 100% understand it. But in the same way as we're using the Monopoly Board to get freedom, the system that's on the Monopoly Board is a slavery system, right? So if you think of it like this, if you know how to use it to your advantage, which is what we've been talking about today, why would you not want to use AI for your advantage? You know, I can't think of a reason why. If you can control it, and we've been able to take its best features and add all the knowledge into it and build a system that can assist you with voiding your mortgage, stopping your mortgage foreclosure and voiding the mortgage charge, getting out of your tax debt, doing other things which will roll out in the future, where you don't need to go to lawyers who don't help you anyway, by the way. In most cases, they work for the courts. Why would you not want to use that? Why would you not want to have a chat with me when you've got a question on the avatar? So I think as we've already, as already experienced earlier, I think a lot of people will use it just for knowledge, if nothing
100%.
else.
100%. And they'll be talking to you direct. They'll love that because so many people want to talk to you direct anyway. So, okay. So does the formal separation of my living soul from the legal fiction allow me to use assets without being held personally liable for the strawman debts?
The answer is no. You see, the agent is the agent, and that's it. It's the debt is the artificial construct's debt, and the living man woman is the agent, and the agent is equally responsible as the principal. The principal is the birth certificate construct that sits on the Monopoly Board. So you can't sever the tie. That's what a lot of people are trying to do, is sever the tie between the living man, woman, and the artificial construct, and then going into courtrooms saying that you can't make me bankrupt. I'm a living man or woman. You can make the birth certificate bankrupt, and the judge will still make the birth certificate construct and drag the living man, woman into the problem because they're already in the problem as the agent. So you can't really separate. What you can do is discharge all the debts, and you use the Monopoly Game Changer, or you use the art of legal warfare and the AI systems that are coming soon to get rid of the problems. But you can't sever the tie. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Okay. So, can the spend and recruitment cycle truly create a self-sustaining infinity loop where my lifestyle and expenditure have no substance cost over time?
Well, the current monetary system has been running pretty much since 1913. The Federal Reserve Act, it's one of the big pivot points, big tipping points. Then you've got 1933, where the mortgage is taken out, the bankruptcy of the United States. So it's coming up 100 years. The system has been running. A lot of people have said to me, well, what happens if the dollar loses the reserve currency status? And my answer to that is, have you looked into how much infrastructure is based around the dollar system? Nearly every single transaction that is going on in the world is balanced back to the dollar. Nearly every securities trade that goes on is dollar based. People talk about the BRICS, they talk about cryptocurrency, they talk about CBDCs, like all these things are going to replace the dollar. No, the British pound was the reserve currency of the world for a long, long time. And the dollar, in my opinion, will be the reserve currency of the world for a long time to come, because there isn't any other system to replace it with. See, people talk about, oh yeah, the BRICS is going to come out and it's going to replace the dollar. Really? So how are you going to transact in the BRICS when you go and buy your groceries down the supermarket? It's all based on the system that's already in place. It's taken a long time for them to wire up this system, which is a worldwide system. They're not going to get rid of it all. They're going to add things to it. They're not going to get rid of it. People say, oh, what about stable coins, Ian? Surely that's going to replace fiat currency. Yeah, maybe it will, but it's still ex nihilo credit. It's still based on signature credit, all of it. No matter what they call it, recoupment is going to be available. If it's not available, then the whole system is gone. When you really understand it at the level I do, if they remove signature credit recoupment, which is the way the system works, now you've got rid of the dollar completely, and that's the whole world's going to collapse.
Yeah,
never come back from it, in my opinion.
No, totally agree with you. Okay, so we are going to do a little poll. So let me get this. Oop. There we go. Right, okay. So I'm going to start the poll. So it's, do you want a consultant to do you want a consultation to discover how to proceed with the Monopoly Game Changer protocol? So let me start that. So you are already doing it, or you would like more information? And that's just gone poof and blown up. So looks like a lot of people would like more information and have already started doing it in some sort of way. 50-50 at the moment, though. There we go. So it looks like a lot more people want a lot of information. So, okay. So what we'll be doing is we will be letting you know how you can get moving with this. Right, I'm going to stop the poll. Okay. So
looking at those percentages, it looks like it's pretty popular then, yeah? I would imagine,
yeah.
Those percentages, yeah.
100%, yeah. A lot of people would like more information. So, which is good, of which we will be getting in contact with you. So obviously the next steps, if you do have any further questions and you would like to book in a consultation, then you can click, and I'm getting a lot of yeses, yes. So yeah, that looks like we're getting a lot. So if you do want to book in a call and speak to one of the consultants or myself, then you can click on the link, which is in the chat for you. So that's in the chat for you. And then once you're on the page, it will put your email address in, and then you can see where to book a call, and it should take you straight into the booking page so that you can book in with one of the consultants.
Is it? I think it's probably worth saying, Kirst, that the email has to be the email that we know you by.
Yeah.
Some people have got more than one email address, and they put one in there it doesn't give them access. It's because you need to use the email that you used when you first kind of got involved with our platform. I think that's right.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So ideally, I mean, I know some people have got multiple email accounts. Whatever you're registered with, like your paid member account, and if you're not yet a paid member, then the main email, then that's the one that you need to do. So, okay, if the link isn't working, guys, you are going to get an email later on. So there will be an email and the link will be on there. So there may just be a little bit of a glitch with that. So don't worry, you're going to get an email after this presentation later on with all the links and everything else and next steps for you. So we've obviously got some more important links as well, which will all be sent out on the email. Ian, did you want to say anything about any of these?
Well, because of the way I'm built, I need to understand how things work. So I go overboard with research. I go overboard with technical papers, because that's what my training was. When I was money manager, wealth manager, I had to justify everything with the research. So I've carried on doing that. I think it's a good discipline. I know a lot of people don't read it, but that's okay. If anybody ever does want to challenge me on it, it's in my research papers. It's in my avatar. I actually enjoy doing the research, because figuring out complex problems and figuring out the solution is something I get enjoyment from. So this, I have to say, this was one of the biggest ones I've ever figured out. But I've enjoyed doing it. So if you don't want to read my papers, it's okay, but you might want to have a chat with the avatar. But if you do want to read the papers, they're here. I'd recommend that you get something like Speechify, load the papers in, copy and paste them in, and then you can, when you're doing whatever you're doing, hoovering the house, you can be listening to something which you're intrigued by and you want to know more information. So
yeah, it is a lot of information, so I would recommend putting it in Speechify, because then you can listen to it on the go, as it were.
Yeah, I think the Telegram channel is well worth joining, and there's a lot of people in there. The numbers are gradually rising, and we all know, I mean, it's no secret, there's a lot of propaganda, which I probably should have said up front, but I guess that most people on this webinar already know. There's huge propaganda about me. I've done 2 documentaries about it. There's a whole website talking about it. Basically, I'm the guy that the slave masters don't like me having my voice. So if you're a slave master on this webinar, you ain't shutting me up anytime soon. I'm going to keep on saying what I say and doing what I do. They've tried to arrest me twice. They've tried to throw me in jail because they want to keep you in slavery. So, I'm here in constructive exile, so I can carry on doing what I'm talking about today, because I think it's very important. They're never going to stop me having my freedom. So there you go.
Definitely not. And we appreciate everything that you do, and we really do. So these are the handouts, which will, when the copy is uploaded to the platform, the handouts will be on the platform. And like I said, you will also get an email, which will have a copy of all of the handouts that you can go through and look through and read and update yourself. Ian, did you want to just go over the invitation awards again? Rewards. Well,
it's pretty simple. We've got a website which every webinar has got a link. You can take the link there. You can, if you're an advocate, you can take the link from your advocate the admin side of your advocate platform account that you've got, and you can send it out on social media. You get your own. It comes with a page that talks about what the next webinar is about. There's a link, and anyone who that you refer, you automatically it adds it all up. It adds it to your digital wallet within our system. So if you had 10 people come to a webinar, that's £1,000 that you can put off, set off against the enrollment for the Monopoly Game Changer. I want to get more and more people on the webinars, and this is my one way of getting more people to come. Is our existing, those that are already doing this, those that are they're figuring it out, they're liking it, they're enjoying it, and they want to be part of it. Refer others, and there's huge amounts of shadow banning going on. Social media. I put a video out, I get 10 people watching it in the first few days. It's ridiculous. Years ago, I'd have thousands of people watching a video that I put out. Now you get like 10 or 20 people watching it because it's all shadow banned. So word of mouth is the best way for us to spread the word on this. I've always believed that. It's why we have the advocate system. It's why the webinar rewards, because they can't stop you sharing a link to a webinar. But if we put it out on social media, most of it gets shadow banned. Nobody gets to see it. So simply because they want to keep everyone in slavery. We want people to be free. They want everyone to be a slave. And that's your battle that's going on all the time.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So, okie dokie. So if you do have any additional questions, you're going to receive a form from Simone where you can submit your questions, share any feedback. Ian is going to have a follow-up session with Andy. So all of those questions will be sent over to Andy for him to ask and grill Ian on. Normally get quite a few, don't you? I think sometimes it goes on for maybe 2 hours?
Yeah, we've done many Q&As. They're normally an hour and a half to 2 hours. There's 20, 30 questions. So everybody's question gets asked. Sometimes the questions are the same, so we combine them because they're kind of the same question. Yeah. All of those Q&As are on the ROS Media channel. And every time I do a webinar or do a Q&A or an interview, all of that content is loaded up into the Ian Clifford avatar. So if you miss something and you want to go in and say, what on that last webinar Ian did, give me the summary of it, tell me what the main points are, that avatar is going to be able to do it for you.
Perfect. Loving this. Going to love this avatar. It's going to be amazing. So yeah, looking forward to it already. On a final note, so from me, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Ian, any last words?
Well, just spread the word. Things are going to get a lot worse on the Monopoly board. The agenda is there for everyone to see it. UN Agenda 2030. We're not that far away from it. There's going to be a lot of problems, engineered problems, deliberately engineered problems. More and more people are struggling on the Monopoly board. The cost of living crisis is a big issue for a lot of families. There is always a solution. The Monopoly Game Changer, I believe, solves most problems. It's not going to solve your health, but it might help you to get health get better health, because we're going to be rolling out a lot of natural health solutions within our Freedom Plan, and we can only do that by taking a share of the credit recoupments at the back end, donations, and then you recoup those donations. That's how we finance our Freedom Plan and our sovereign nation. So we're basically financing, get the irony of this, right? We'll be financing our sovereign nation from the taxes that ordinarily would be retained by the United States Treasury. So how about that for an idea?
Amazing. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. We're getting lots of wonderful thank you comments. Ian, you're amazing. Superb presentation. This is brilliant. Love it. Can't wait to get started. So lots of thank yous, and we thank you all for attending. So we appreciate all your feedback. It helps us improve and create better sessions for you all. So please take a minute to share your thoughts by emailing simone.p@ros-pma.is. Even a short message will make a difference. You will be getting an email following this, so look out for that. So just want to say thank you very much for all your support, and we'll see you on the next webinar. And if not, I'll be speaking to some of you very soon, I hope. So thank you very much for today, Ian. Much appreciated for all your wealth of knowledge and a fantastic presentation, and looking forward to next week and the avatar and getting that bit going. So yeah, any final words?
Well, I think that anybody who's sitting on the fence, who is not decided yet, go into ROS Media. I think we're sending this out. There's the interview with Ange where she's showing you the tax transcripts, the confirmations from the IRS. So if anybody's still skeptical about whether what I am presenting here and what we're offering is not viable, then go and look at the proof. There is proof. We've had checks. We've had $600 million of confirmed recoupments last year. So it's not a theory, it's real. I explain it all in my papers if you want to read them.
Okay, all right. On that final note, Ian, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Don't work too hard. Everyone that's attended today, thank you very much. And we will see you all very soon. Have a good day. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.